Ladies and gentlemen, this is Benny Goodman. I know I don't sound as awake as normal, and that's just because I'm not. But whatever, fuck it. I 2020'd myself today.
Working hard?
Yeah, or hardly working, but hard about it.
Weren't you like making cupcakes today? There was like a distinctive block in your schedule. Oh, Sunday. Okay.
Oh, we had Sunday. Yeah, we did make ice cream Sundays. In fact.
Oh, right. Okay. Sundays.
You forget already? Sunday. I didn't eat it. I do way too many push-ups and pull-ups and shit to try to like look even remotely like Pauly Calafiore. I can't fucking eat that shit.
So are you going to introduce us or anything?
Yeah. Well, I guess. I mean, so I'm very excited, as you can clearly tell, because energy transfers. Siobhán Cronin, everybody.
Hi.
That's Cory clapping. And then we have Cory Peza, who is, like I said, more than just a bass player.
Yay, Cory.
He's also an avid drinker of alcohol. Better. So, like again, sponsors, get that. Like, if you work for
that doesn't paint me in a really good light.
You don't start off by introducing someone as an alcohol drinker.
I thought we're trying to get sponsors. Don't we want the Jameson people to be like, oh, we want that guy?
Yeah, we'll take anyone. We're not going to be too picky.
Yeah, people sponsor
Snapple really is the best stuff on earth as I'm drinking this Sprite. It's delicious.
While you're at home drinking your beverages, or hopefully not driving in your car drinking some alcohol, we've got a pretty cool episode.
Well, I didn't want to name drop about Aerosmith or Ozzy or Studio 54 or Pearl Jam or Charlie Daniels, even though he wasn't dead yet, and Van Halen, even though he wasn't dead yet. Rip Eddie the King. I mean, I did just do that, though.
Anyways, to give some context to what Ben's screaming about, we're talking to industry legend Dan Beck this week, who has worked with people on that list that Ben rifled off, including Aerosmith, Ozzy, Pearl Jam,
Ozzy, Studio 54, Pearl Jam, Charlie Daniels, Van Halen.
He talks about Studio 54. I don't think he actually worked there.
I thought he worked in the bathrooms, giving them clean the hands and stuff, and then gave him cocaine when Michael Jackson wouldn't take it.
Well, hey, let's not speculate. People just need to tune in and listen. He's, an industry legend with, interactions with all these people we've mentioned. Just so many amazing stories behind the curtain, behind the scenes, talking to some of the biggest superstars in the industry.
Well, I know. Absolutely. I wanted to know since I was a child what the fuck happened when Ozzy bit the head off, a dove. Dan was not in the room, but he was the first call. And I gotta tell you, I can only imagine that first. Well, you can hear it actually.
Yeah, the story. You can listen to the story in the episode itself. But we recorded this back in June, so yeah, we do talk about Van Halen and Charlie Daniels, who have passed since then. But
so ironic, yeah.
And
also at the time we were working with Dan with our band Lost Symphony. We kind of talk about that a little bit as well.
I mean, honestly, if you guys listen, his charity is so huge. The fact that he even had time to come talk to us on the show is ridiculous. So I don't know. I speak for myself, but I'm thankful for every moment.
Yeah, he dropped in and shared his knowledge, gave us some advice, and then
taught us how to fish.
Went on his merry way.
Yeah, we're fishing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Exactly.
And you can kind of get a little glimpse of that knowledge in this episode. So stay tuned. Dan Beck on 2020.
And welcome to this week's episode of 2020. I'm Benny Goodman, and I want to, before we get into all the things that are going through my head, if you didn't notice this, I would like to introduce our dais, the incubation tribe, the hoarding culture here. We have over there is Cory Peza trying to rip off my Iron Maiden. We both were twinning today.
Yes.
Down there is the always filtered looking Siobhán Cronin, but that's actually just the way she looks. It's obnoxious. I agree with you. And then I'm so pleased to announce someone who's so above our pay grade, who's so beyond this, he must literally have nothing else to do. I'd like to introduce a musical legend, this Dan Beck, who has worked with everybody from Pearl Jam and Michael Jackson to Ozzy Osbourne. And you know what? I really don't know. It's kind of like my dad, where I don't know what he does. I kind of knows what he does. Dan, could you tell our listeners why you're so awesome?
I've just been around a long time, and things happen, and you happen to be there, So it's that's been happening to me over and over and over again, and I'm lucky.
Could you maybe talk a little bit about the early side of your career? Because I always find it interesting, especially from a musician standpoint. How does somebody end up on a certain path?
Well, I grew up. My brother was an absolute Elvis Presley, fanatic, and it was my big brother. So my big brother was awesome to me, and so God, this guy Elvis, and then I started seeing a fan and a superstar and what it meant. And I think ultimately that has guided me to try to be that person who brings artists and audiences together.
Well, can you really explain, Dan? I don't mean to interrupt, but as a stoner, you still didn't answer my question. Why are you so awesome? You were so humble about it.
That's a loaded question.
Name drop, because I have this whole sheet on my computer that says stuff like Living Color, Ozzy Osbourne, Jeff Beck, Stevie Ray Vaughan, Cindy Ray Vaughan. So you clearly did something other than mow people's lawns. Tell our viewers why what you're saying is so important, please.
All right. So going back to what Siobhán said. So I started writing songs, playing in local bands, and I was a lousy musician, but I had great kind of lyrical ideas, and so I really started pursuing it. And I ended up, I jumped on a plane, Eastern Airlines out of Pittsburgh. I flew to Nashville and met a whole bunch of people that were on the street down there who were not country music people. It was like the Doobie Brothers and Captain Hook and the Medicine Show and Shel Silverstein and all these people. I ended up getting a job ultimately writing for
like hanging out with Shel
magazine.
Silverstein, smoking weed, like hanging out, talking about the Giving Tree. Like, is that, are you like, were you around at that time? You just said Shel Silverstein out of nowhere. Just randomly Shel Silverstein's like hanging out with the Doobie Brothers.
Yeah, well, Shel used to come by my office all the time.
Oh,
that's amazing.
Yeah,
it's and Shel actually.
I just wave at him.
That's another story. I won't even get into that one. But anyway, I ended up being in the South as outlaw music was happening out of Texas, and the Southern rock scene was developing out of Macon and Atlanta. And I was writing about it as a young journalist in the South. But I was from the North, and I was a rock and roller. Mm-hmm. So, and I was doing the country reviews. I was going to the Grand Ole Opry every Saturday night. And, but I ended up, I got to know Charlie Daniels. I wrote some stories about him. I ended up at Epic.
Charlie Daniels.
And I ended up at Epic. And he was thrilled that I was there. He signed when I was head of publicity in New York. But I was Tammy Wynette's first publicist. I was the first record label publicist in Nashville. I got David Allan Coe on the cover of the New York Times Sunday magazine before he had an album out. It's
okay. I have to ask this because one of the liner notes on here says Pantera, and I know that David Allan Coe and Pantera like loved each other.
Right.
Is there any backstory to this?
Yeah. We'd have to jump ahead about 30 some years.
Well, I want to know about Dimebag because I can't survive waiting that long.
Right. Well, actually, the involvement with Pantera was I managed Biohazard about 20 years ago. I don't know if anybody knows that band, but
heard of them.
And we put together the Uncivilized album, which came out in 2001. It actually came out on 9/11, and
that must have been a great day for it to come out. What a Tuesday,
boy! But anyway, we got all these guys from Pantera, from all the great metal bands of that moment in time. Guested on the Biohazard album. Then we released the album. We did an in-store here on Long Island at midnight on the Tuesday night that the record came out, and the next morning, 9/11, and I had the guys getting on a plane that afternoon to go to Europe.
Wow.
To be on the Tattoo the Planet tour. Jeez. Pantera was headlining. Slayer was the special guest. We were like fifth on the bill, and of course, no planes took off.
Yeah,
right.
Tour was done. Pantera decided they did not want to leave the U.S. and it was chaos for like a week or two. We couldn't even. We were nowhere with our album. It was just gone. And but the tour started to come back together, and as it turned out, Slayer was going to headline, and the guys in Biohazard and the guys in Slayer had kind of an interesting history, and Slayer probably didn't want them on the tour. So we had to patch that up a bit. And
you're casually going over so much cool stuff. So do you sit down Kerry King and grab Evan from Biohazard and go, hey guys, can we sing Kumbaya? Like,
yeah, that was basically what we did.
But is that what you do? Because I mean, I've seen Evan. He's a scary dude. He played a guy on Oz. If you haven't seen him,
their manager was a friend of mine. He had tour managed some band that I had product managed at Epic when I was in marketing at Epic.
So he protected you from Evan.
Yeah. So the manager and I forget his name now. We connected, and he told me the whole story of why they had a problem, and it was like, okay, I got to go back to my band. They got to go make up, with Slayer, and let's see if we can pull this together.
So, is Biohazard and Slayer cool now? Because we don't want any of this
I think so.
West Coast stuff going on anymore. We need to really settle this. We don't need another Tupac.
That was 20 years ago. They probably can't even remember what they were fighting about. So it's
we've got like a million stories that I can't wait to get into. But on that topic, would you say that part of your job over the past, so many decades has been like a therapist to these bands and to the artists?
Some people used to call me Epic's psychiatrist, but like back in the old days, back in the physical product days of music, the key was you had to have that album in position, at the right time in the right stores at the right moment. And, and essentially, a record success back then was the radio. You put it on the radio.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so again, I'm going to interrupt
except for metal,
because I see on my screen here that you were there for Ozzy Osbourne, who happens to be, if anyone knows me, like Ozzy was my life's blood until I watched how he is now, which kind of makes me sad. But how he was, Ozzy was the biggest thing ever. And I want to know, like you said, you're responsible for making sure that records happen. Were you part of like all this Ozzy stuff? Because I hear this story about how he came into a record company release, bit the head off of a dub or something. Yeah. Were you there? Please tell me.
I was not, but I got the first call from that conference room.
Of course you did.
And my staff was, my marketing staff was in the meeting, and they were a little uptight. You don't say. Ozzy went in. Ozzy and Sharon and a dear old friend of mine named Pat Siciliano, who worked for Ozzy and Sharon. They just went in to bust chops. I still question whether it was just a theatrical trick, but everybody in the room to this day swears it was live. But, my thought was that he had a dummy, that he bit the head and had the blood capsule and released the live dove.
While we're at it, is Paul McCartney really Paul McCartney?
That I have no idea.
Are you sure?
But
you don't have an opinion?
But I will tell you that later, a few years later, I took Ozzy to dinner at the restaurant sign of the dove. And I have a picture of it. I'll send you.
Nice.
Wow!
It's he and I outside looking up at the sign. So.
But before we go any further, I just want to tell everyone, address the room and the elephant, what this is. So I got 2020 this week, but I have nobody to blame but myself. And it's really this, a long, like, how you see your life flash before your eyes. This was a life flashing before my eyes moment, because when I was a child, people thought I looked like Macaulay Culkin. From Home Alone. But except I realized that now I've come full circle where I was Macaulay Culkin. I was Macaulay Culkining myself in the house, and I was actually Joe Pesci and the other guy getting my ass kicked by myself, because what happened was, started off with a cough. And this is an affirmation in life, how you know that you're starting to get old and things, regardless of your tour shirts, you're getting old. I coughed, and it then started this chain reaction that caused my back to blow out. But before I realized the squirrel of electricity going up my back was going to cause me to be debilitated, I then ran into a door at full speed. And then falling onto the floor, I didn't realize how hard I hit myself. I was just embarrassed. But as I got up, I was about 70% up. And then I realized that my back was thrown out. And then I fell directly onto my face again to only realize there was blood on the floor. And that's when I realized it looked like this.
Is there video evidence of this?
I really, really wish that there was. All I can tell you is that I came up with this idea
You should make it a meme.
of the flux capacitor. And I realized I could go back in time. But other than that, this is called being 2020. But by myself in my own house, there's nothing but Neosporin. So I'm sorry to interrupt, but I just wanted to let people know if you were disturbed, there was no domestic violence from anyone other than myself.
Oh my gosh.
Good.
Well, to go back to some, other music content. So a couple of things that I wanted to bring up just for anyone that might not, like listeners that might not know what goes on behind the scenes in the music industry. You mentioned a lot of like different job titles like project manager. And I know this was something that was new for me getting into rock bands and meeting people that work at labels. There's so many different levels of, creative control and marketing and stuff that goes on. And I mean, maybe you can talk a little more to like some of the different types of jobs that you had and the types of work that you did with different artists and, how that trajectory played out.
Right. Well, I started as a publicist, getting press for acts. And then I transitioned to the marketing department, became a product manager. And at major labels.
You see yourself like a music fluid kind of person that you can do like all sorts of things? You don't know publishing. It's all a little bit A&R.
It's
music fluid.
I ran Aerosmith's publishing at one point, and I gave Steven Tyler his first royalty check.
Wow.
And,
No big deal. No big deal.
I don't think he remembers it. I used to introduce.
I don't think he remembers 1982 to 1989, Dan.
It's every time I would see him, he'd come into the office. I was working at his management company at the time, and he would come into the office, and I would introduce myself to him every time.
Oh my gosh! Wow.
And sometimes
he's one of those guys.
And sometimes he would say, "Dan, why are you reintroducing yourself?" And it's like, but sometimes he didn't. So.
Wouldn't it be great to live in a world like that, where some days you just know like what's going on, and other days it's just a new day for you, like Groundhog Day.
Or that you can get away with that. You have to get to a certain level for that to be socially acceptable.
Okay, hold on. So I want to ask Dan a question.
Wait, he hasn't even answered my question. Okay, so hold on to your question.
So I became a product manager. What a product manager does, this is at Epic, and you're assigned artists, and you're kind of the concierge. You're the guide through the corporation, and so you're meeting with the art department on the cover. You're doing the scheduling. You're meeting with all the other departments to make sure everybody's in sync. And of course, back in the old school days, everything had to arrive at the right time, and that was a big part of it. Today, you don't have to worry about that, But so you would get an artist, and a lot of times what would start to happen is you'd get a reputation as a product manager, and then artist managers or their attorneys would ask for, oh, hey, we want Dan to handle this, that kind of thing.
Interesting.
And, so it kind of goes that way. And, but I worked with the Isley Brothers early on. Charlie Daniels, I product managed The Clash, and it was really, quite involved with them in the early stages. And, Cyndi Lauper, and one of the other things we did was... Can I
interject, Dan? Because the reason we have Dan, and I need to say this, is because he's part of our sponsor. The only reason that that we could get someone so far out of our pay grade is because Dan is actually part of the Lost Symphony team, which is the whole reason this is here. I know, it just got so corny. Like, I could feel Cory just inside his soul going... Oh
no! I was hoping I had some Lost Symphony swag to hold up, but
I know I need to get mine.
And I put mine over there.
I know my coffee mug's upstairs.
It's
my record on the wall right there. There's a record.
There you go.
But the reason I was saying that was because when I talked to Dan this week, because here's the thing: when you meet people that are like Dan, that are so humble and have done so much, and they just gloss over things just casually. So I casually send Dan a meme because, we're living in 2020. To get 2020, you send memes to people. That's how we speak. That's how we communicate now. So I send Dan a meme that said something to the extent of, even if you don't like the Eagles, we can still agree that Joe Walsh is pretty awesome. And then Dan wrote back the following, Dan, what did you tell me about Joe Walsh? See, tell me the story. That's what I want to know.
Okay.
Joe Walsh in the hotel room. This is what we want to know.
This is the Holiday Inn Memphis, right on the Mississippi River. We went to a show that night. I don't know whether Joe played, but we had an act on. And I was down there with another guy who was a total asshole from the company. and this guy was busting on our act who had opened. For I don't know whether it was for Joe or who it was. Mm-hmm. But anyway, Irving Azoff, who managed Joe at the time. And
one of the biggest guys in the music industry, for anyone who doesn't know, Google him.
And Joe were there, and they heard this guy bust on this young artist who was struggling, So later we ended up in this guy's room. He invited everybody up. Hey, come up to my hotel room. We'll have a drink. So everybody shows up. Joe Walsh, Irving. I'm there because I'm with this guy traveling with this jerk. And so anyway, they start talking. They said, "Oh, didn't you say this to so-and-so?" And this guy was trying to weasel his way out of it. In the meantime, Joe Walsh took a picture and poured a pitcher of water in the TV set, and they kind of poof, and smoke was coming up. And then he and Irving systematically took this guy's room apart. I mean,
is this like a rock and roll code?
The drop ceiling. They had a plan. I mean, they just systematically.
Who pays for this? I want to know, Dan, who pays for this?
This is reminding me of that Motley Crue docudrama that was on. Anyway, go ahead.
This really happened. That's just written by somebody.
No, I know, but I'm saying this happens.
Right. So at this point, I realized that I needed to rearrange my sock drawer. So I left, and I went to my room. So the next morning I get down, we're checking out, fly back to New York, right? And this guy is sitting in the office with a hotel manager, and they got a calculator going, just running up the cost that he had to pay. But in those days of rock and roll destroying hotel rooms and that sort of thing, there actually seemed to be a reason behind this one because they were getting back at him for dissing this young artist, and I didn't blame him, So
before we move on from the meme thing, I found a meme online that it's attributed to Glenn Danzig, and clearly it's not by Glenn Danzig, but it just makes this all the funnier. But I want to know what you think about this, Dan, because I know you've worked with a lot of assholes, as you've said, and tell me how you feel about this. The shopping cart is the ultimate litmus test for whether a person is capable of self-governing. To return the shopping cart is an easy, convenient task, and one in which we can all recognize as correct, appropriate thing to do. To return the shopping cart is objectively right. There are no situations other than dire emergencies in which a person is not able to return their cart. Simultaneously, it is not illegal to abandon your shopping cart. Therefore, the shopping cart presents itself as the apex example of whether a person will do what is right without being forced to do it. No one will punish you for not returning the shopping cart. No one will fine you or kill you for not returning the shopping cart. You gain nothing by returning the shopping cart. You must return the shopping cart out of the goodness of your own heart. You must return the shopping cart because it is the right thing to do, because it is correct. A person who is unable to do this is no better than an animal, an absolute savage. You can only be made to do what is right by threatening them with the law and the force that stands behind it. The shopping cart is what determines whether a person is a good or bad member of society. Dan, do you return your shopping cart?
Well, Ben, I think you'll have to talk to my attorney.
Oh, my God. That's so funny.
Oh, my gosh. Oh, my gosh. Well, to change gears a little bit, not to change the conversation, but one thing that really interests me a lot that, you know, I wasn't trying to steal your thunder.
Appreciate it. No, don't steal the thunder.
There's so much value to be drawn here. I feel like I gotta get to the questions I have. So one thing that I'm interested in, like, hearing your perspective is, if you were able to identify some things that really sets certain artists apart, or like, what is it that makes certain acts or artists or music really special compared to other things that might not be so successful? You know, because one thing that fascinates me about being in Star Set is, you know, in a lot of ways there might be some similarities with other types of music or other types of performances, but obviously there's some sort of well, no, it's not just money. There is some sort of X factor. Well, you have to think about it, because now in the age of streaming, a lot of it really does have to do with the music, because you might be dealing with fans that are listening to you from overseas that have never seen you live, that maybe haven't seen videos, you know, and they may not even speak the language. So there has to be some sort of thing that, you know, that management maybe sees that's something that they're like, okay, this is gold, you know, and we're going to run with this. So that I'm interested in hearing your perspective on that, maybe with some artists you worked with.
You know, I mean, still, I talk to young artists all the time, and, you know, and basically I tell them, you know, they say, is it a hit? Is it a hit? And I say, it's competitive. I can't say what's a hit, because it's really about being in the game, you know. And I've heard you guys
talk.
Like
a Jay-Z quote? Did you just like paraphrase Jay-Z and try to take that as like a Dan Beck quote? Isn't it about being in the game?
Maybe Jay-Z paraphrased Dan Beck.
Right.
You know what? You know what? I think you might be right, Siobhán. Were we the second layer of Inception, where I just realized that all of like gangster rap's like game concept really came from this guy?
It's all, yeah, right. Probably did. Yeah, right.
Oh my Lord. Jeez. I'm verklempt.
But you know, I think what it is that what attracts me to music is diversity, diversity of ideas, you know, the collision of different forms of music. That I was never very good at marketing, like the you know, the producer singer, you know, where you get the great singer comes in, doesn't necessarily have a point of view, and a great producer makes a record and they have a hit, you know, and that never interested me. I like the Clash. I like working with Pearl Jam. You know, I like working with Living Colour. These are acts that had a point of view.
Is Eddie better or Peach? Because we worked with David, the drummer from Pearl Jam, and he was evilly smited by that man. And I love Pearl Jam, but I just have to know, like, he doesn't seem like a Peach. Is he a Peach? You signed him, right? Like, what made you sign Pearl Jam, Dan?
Well, you know, frankly, I didn't work with him early on with the first album. I product managed the second, third, and fourth albums.
Like that. Yes, of course.
So actually, a guy who worked for me dealt with him early on, and they, you know, hey, they started like any young band. It was like we gave them some tour support, stay out on the road, work, you know, sleep 4 to a room, you know. The longer you could use our money to stay out there, the better.
Why does Eddie hate drummers? Why does he hate drummers?
He does have a drummer thing. Yeah.
Well, it's like Spinal Tap in that band. It's literally like from 96 to 99, from 99 to 2001, and then from 2013 to 2000. I can't keep up with it. Like, it's literally more times than Iron Maiden uses like the A to F to G chord. Does Pearl Jam have drummers? Why?
Yeah. I don't know. It's, you know, I mean, it's really a unique thing. It's
Let's go back really
at night.
One other thing that interested me, I'm interested in what you mean by these bands had a point of view, and then how that set them apart for you. So can you explain what you mean by that?
Yeah, you know, if it's a musical point of view or a political point of view,
so something to say, in other words,
it was something that could really capture the imagination of the fans.
Were you part of the thing when Pearl Jam were giving out tickets for, like, if you didn't dissect your frogs? They had a song called Frogs. Do you remember this?
I do remember that song.
And then, like, if you, like, the first 300 people that petitioned at their school that they wouldn't dissect frogs, like, Eddie Vedder would send them, like, a signed mug or something. Like,
right.
Was that the type of political stuff that you were behind as far as the bombast of Pearl Jam?
Actually not.
Don't kill the frogs, man.
Right. One of the only things that I kind of sold them on coming into the second album after the first album was so huge and they were freaked out by that success. And they were afraid they were going to become, what's the band from the Carolinas that was so big at that time?
Stone Temple Pilots.
No,
that's the joke because that's what everyone thought.
Hootie and the Blowfish.
Oh my god!
And I mean, I think Pearl Jam was concerned that, oh my God, if we just keep loading videos into MTV and the record company just gets ravenous, yeah, give us the next video, we're gonna shove this down everybody's throat until we sell 40 million, and they wanted to back off and no more videos, that kind of thing. Coming into the second album. And I was an older guy for them. They were, I guess when I started product managing them, I was probably, 40 years old, and they were slightly older guys at the time too. They were, probably in their, late 20s, early 30s. And, but they were very suspicious of record company people. Mm-hmm. I mean, very suspicious. And so now they get the suit, they get me,
Right,
it's like,
yeah.
Well, did they ask you Van Halen versus Van Hagar? Like, did they give you like the questions? Did they like smell you out?
So, well, yeah,
like
they're checking you out and, and it's like, so I went, they were actually doing something at Universal on the Universal lot in LA. So I went to the lot to meet them to talk about an ad campaign. And there had been some talk, the big 4-color ad at Billboard and, color ads everywhere. And I sat down with Eddie and I said, and he said, yeah, so what are you guys going to do? Or what do you want to do? And and he was ready to kind of wince. And I said, I don't think we should take an ad in Rolling Stone. And I said, I'd like to do half pages in like local rags in black and white.
Yeah.
And so that we, just become like a little indie band again in our
ad. And this is how Eddie Vedder loves you. That is such an Eddie Vedder.
Boom. It was like,
he was probably like, that's the coolest thing ever.
But what I was trying to do was, every time I work with an act is to try to figure out what they want to do, because
so important. Yeah.
Too many record executives walk in. Well, you got to do this, you got to do that. That's bullshit. I mean, it's like, you get a great act and they know where they're going. Then you just look out for the potholes for them. You look for the potential problems. You try to emphasize their strengths, and help them avoid maybe like some things that they don't do well.
Because Cory actually tried to interject, and what people don't know is that Dan actually has a hearing aid foundation as well, which is why I also tell people, wear fucking earplugs all the time, daily. Go, why do you talk so loud? And I thought it's because I was angry. Because I'm fucking deaf. So when Dan talks over you,
the reason I backed off is because you actually continued on to kind of what I was going to ask, which was I want to hear.
I thought I had your back.
I appreciate it.
You're
Ben.
welcome. You're welcome, Cory.
No, so
ungrateful bass player.
He's just embarrassed that I have these things.
Wear earplugs, children.
Yeah, protect your hearing.
Yes, absolutely. And you were talking about kind of like a very overarching philosophy on how you look at bands and marketing them. Is that something that stayed consistent over your career? Is there any new challenges or different ways you look at artists now compared to when you're working with those Pearl Jams and other artists like that?
I think there's a certain fundamental thing that, is always tried and true. I mean, it's a live performance. It's,
sure.
There's a lot of fundamental things that stay the same. The structure around the business changes. was talking about the old school, dealing with physical product. Our challenge was, really internal to the record business. We had to turn on the record stores, radio, and our sales force. We had like 1,000 people working across the country, and a lot of my marketing was to turn them on and get them to understand a band, so we all were talking the same way about.
Okay, I'm going to interject again about something
That's
I'm
so
reading
interesting.
on my page. It's because so we're going to bring it back to the old school, as Dan calls it. I see on here, Dan, and I've known you for a very long time, and I knew nothing about this. It says Beatlemania first Studio 54 party. Can you please take me to that party? What was going on?
To be alive in the
I
days
didn't
of
know you were
Studio 54.
cryogenically frozen. I mean, look, I know you're old because I'm old because I coughed and hurt my back. I didn't know you were cryogenically frozen and still saved and preserved.
Yeah, it's
there with Steve Rebell and what happened? What happened to the Beatles?
They, number one, we came to Boston. We did the Colonial Theater for 3 weeks. And I was trying to stay away from Beatlemania when I worked for Lieber Krebs. It's like, it was at that point.
Sad.
At that point, there were absolutely zero tribute bands, and there were a handful of bands out doing Beatles things, and that was it. And so now when this show started to come together, I was like, you can't do that. That's like sacrilege, So Steve Lieber would ask me almost every day, Dan, you got to get involved. Come over to SIR and see the work. And I really liked the guys, Mitch Weissman and Joey Pecorino, who were Paul and John. Great guys. So they'd be up at the office. They'd come back and see me, and we'd hang out. And they were doing a great job. So we went up to Boston. It almost went away. The show almost died. And that's a whole other story. But we came back to New York. We're going to open on Broadway. And we sit down and talk about it and say, what's going to happen opening night? All the New York Times theater critic is going to come. He's going to throw up in the aisle. He's going to say, this is my theater. Get out of here. Get out of my city. This is a bridge and tunnel show. We knew they were going to kill us. But the rule on Broadway was that if the critics would not come to your show until you announced an opening night. So we did previews, and then we decided we're not going to do an opening night. We're never going to invite them to review us.
Dan, is that just what you do through your whole career? Just say, don't put in Rolling Stone. Don't do an opening night. Is this
so we didn't do an opening night.
Don't even practice.
What we did decide to do was to do a celebrity night. And there was a party at this club called Studio 54.
Legendary.
And I think it was about, middle of May that year. That was 77. Yeah, 77. Yeah. Anyway, so I went over and met with Ian Schrager and the two guys who owned it. That was a scene. I mean, I went into their office. There was like no lights on. There was cash everywhere. I mean, it was like, oh my God. That was like bills, money everywhere, and
leave your fingerprints on top of everything.
So I made a deal with them to do this party, this celebrity night party. Here's what we want to do, blah, blah, blah. So I go back and we get together and say, okay, we got to get some celebrities out for this thing now, right? So now we start putting the word out, and those celebrities wanted to come to a Beatles knockoff show. So we got no celebrities coming, to this big Studio 54 celebrity night thing, So we had Steven Tyler because Lieber and Krebs went and said, you're our client, you're coming, So Tyler's coming now. So, right. So So in the meantime, Lieber's starting to freak out. He's sweating every day. He comes in my office. Dan, you got to do something. We got to get some celebrities. Said, Steve, we're asking, we're talking to every publicist at every label.
We only got Steve and Tyler.
Yeah.
And so anyway, in desperation, I worked with a guy named Kevin McShane, who was another manager in the office. And I said, you know what? This is impersonators on stage, right? I said, let's hire a bunch of impersonator celebrities. And we'll just
awesome.
We'll make the party. It'll be all fake. It'll be, and it'll all be.
I feel like this is a metaphor for the entire music industry.
That's
so
brilliant.
anyway, we had a plan. So we started hiring, Liza Minnelli and Michael Jackson lookalike. We're getting so in the meantime, I talked to Susan Blonde, who's one of the greatest publicists ever in the music business, and who I had worked with when I was at Epic. And I called Susan, and we had talked to her a couple of times, and she said, let me see what I can do. So what did Susan do? She brought Michael Jackson, and she brought Andy Warhol.
Oh my God. Jesus.
And then we got Liza Minnelli at the last minute.
Are you sure Freddie Mercury wasn't in there dressed like a woman?
In the meantime, I'm looking around at the party, and there's a Michael Jackson lookalike over here, and there's Michael Jackson over there. There's Liza Minnelli's over here and a lookalike over there. It was totally bizarre. In the meantime, the Studio 54 people are, it's a party. We're paying for the open bar and all that. I'm running around chasing celebrities and doing all this shit. They are charging them for drinks at the bar. These guys were ruthless. It's like I'm running back. Stop! You can't do it.
How do you think they have all the money in the back room?
That's right.
Not by giving shit away to Michael Jackson.
So
water, please.
So as it turned out, we had a huge hit. And
that's amazing.
We got major press out of that.
Wow!
Night.
So that's a great way. That's a great example of taking one situation, turning it around, and making it a benefit.
That's it.
How important strategy is. And I think it's so important, because I notice this also being on, let's say, the artist side when I meet people at the label. And maybe it's just a stereotype, but we'll meet, let's say, a group of 10 people that are from the label, and one of them is creative and gets it. And I think that's really hard, especially in terms of artists versus corporate relations is, so much of it is having somebody that's on the same page of you and understanding that there are ways to work around, thinking outside the box.
And willing to take a risk too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's it. And Cory, you said it. I think that's one of the big problems with record companies today is that, when the disruption came, around 2000, all of a sudden, every record company clammed up. All the money stopped. There's no tour support money. There's no advertising money. There's, it's nothing. And so from 2000 until streaming started to really take hold. So what's that? 2015?
Yeah, maybe.
You have 15 years of people who are now marketing experts in the music business who only know how to say no. They've never been given a nickel.
I'm going to interrupt you, Dan.
To take a risk.
You don't want to know why Dan is so great? Because he practices what he preaches, because he's taking a risk on us. The fact that he's even working with us, the fact that he's here today, he could be anywhere else. You know what? Who knows what's going to happen to Dan?
Don't remind him it's a risk.
You know what I mean? But you know what I hate is when people tell me that my hair sucks, but their hair is worse or something like that. But he's taking a risk on us because the chances of
this is the biggest risk of my life. This could be this could be my swan song.
Right. We're going to be the ones to take him down after all these years. No, that's amazing, Dan. I love hearing the kind of mindsets behind some of these bigger decisions and stuff that you think about. Millions of people know about some of these stories on the face of them, but what's behind them is in my opinion, far more fascinating, because I'm sure for every one of those successes, there's a lot of failures as well.
Oh man, a lot of bands that I loved, and we took it to the wall. We didn't get lucky. It didn't have traction for whatever reason, and it just you never get over those.
Are there any artists that maybe saw like multiple walls and failures but then turned it around that you can think of?
One thing that was interesting to me was Charlie Daniels. And Charlie Daniels, when I met him back in like 1972, he was on Buddha Records, and they had the song about Uneasy Rider, which is about driving around the parking lot, and they had a minor hit with that song, and they started getting booked for shows that people thought they were like a novelty act, and they didn't know they were like a Southern boogie band, right? So Joe Sullivan, who managed them, I was at Record World at the time as Southeastern editor, and he called me up and said, "Hey Dan, we got a problem. We need to tell this story about who they really are. I need somebody who can tell that story," and it fascinated me, and I said, "Hey, let me get into it." So I met Charlie. We did an interview. I did the story, and it really explained who they were. That Charlie was a session player in Nashville. He played on Bob Dylan's records. And that just who they were as a band. And Charlie and I kind of started a relationship then. It was a few years later. Had moved to New York, and I was head of publicity for Epic, and Charlie was signed. And so he was thrilled. "Hey, I got a bud in New York," and it's like, so Charlie and I get together when he's signed to Epic. And so I asked him, I said, "Hey, how's it been going over these last few years? That challenge you had a couple of years ago, trying to identify who you were." And he said, "You know what?" He said, "You know what, bud?" he said, "Everything we do everything. We do every interview. We say thank you. We send notes. We do everything." And he said, "We just are hitting this ceiling, and we can't break through it." And he said, it's so frustrating, And in the meantime, Charlie did everything I ever asked him to do, when I was running publicity. Well, I left the company, went to Lieber Krebs, and I was in the management business a couple of years. And I came back and to Epic a couple of years later in the marketing department. So Charlie hears I'm coming back. He said, "Could Dan be my product manager?" So bang, So
I got a guy.
So I sit down. Yeah, it's my
I got
bud.
a guy in New York. My bud in New York.
Yeah, so it's
Dan.
Charlie would always say, "He's from Long Island." Anyway, so Charlie and I, we have this same conversation again, and he tells me exactly the same thing. He said, "Since you left, I've been doing everything. Every interview, every thank you, we just do everything." And he said, we can't get any further. We can't seem to break through. So with that album, which was called Million Mile Reflection, which was that they had put 1,000,000 miles on their bus, okay, and touring. The first single off that was Devil Went Down to Georgia.
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
So this thing starts exploding. And what happened was my phone exploded too, because everybody was calling and saying, "You know what? That guy did everything I ever asked him to do." Radio stations, journalists, record store clerks, everybody said, "What can I do to help?
That's great.
I want to help that guy."
Yeah.
And
Interesting.
what happened was that album, I think, sold 3 million copies. But what we had bought the catalog from Buddha, and so we had like 6 other albums, and they had all sold a couple 100,000 records, but nothing above that. they all went platinum.
Nice.
Amazing.
We
Wow.
sold like 6 million albums.
You want to know what I took from that?
On
Was
one
like
single.
something. Listen to Dan Beck, then made money.
Before we move on, I just want to say, coincidentally, last summer I opened for Charlie Daniels Band, and he's 80-something, 82, 83.
Wow.
That dude
Very cool.
shreds. He is amazing. His band is phenomenal, and they were selling out this place. It was like a 2,500 cap room, and they just crushed it. Still,
Yeah, Charlie's like 82 now, and it's like they're playing better now than they were 20 years ago.
Phenomenal.
But that might have been, a little too much booze,
But Dan,
a little too much smoke.
Never answered the question though from the Pearl Jam story. You never answered it. So if you were on a desert island, would you listen to the Van Halen catalog with Sammy Hagar as a singer, or would you listen to the Van Halen catalog with David Lee Roth as a singer? And we're just going to ignore Gary Sharon as much as I love him as a person. He's a non-factor in this equation.
Yeah, I'd probably listen to my demos.
You have demos with Van Halen?
No, of me.
I'm saying if you had to choose one or the other, we're trying to determine.
You have
how
to
much
talk.
of a
No,
network-
Ben. You have to talk to his attorney. He's not going to.
The Hagar or
Roth.
Okay. Well, I forget where I read this just recently about. It was the A&R guy that.
All I know he's old. He still reads.
And I loved Roth because of the flamboyance, and
as a marketing guy,
and frankly, they were on Warner Brothers or whatever. That was competition, I didn't really get into them. It's like I was so focused on my acts. When Sammy Hagar was managed by a guy named Jeff Dornfeld, and Jeff was a very good friend of mine. Jeff was tour manager for Sammy. And then he ultimately became the manager of Group Boston, and I had product managed Boston. So Jeff and I got to know each other, and I actually kind of grew into liking Sammy. I thought
liking Sammy Hagar.
Yeah,
it's awesome.
So
I say that because I actually like Van Hagar better. I get eviscerated by everybody because I grew up. Nostalgia. It shows you the nature nurture of music. Is that like I grew up with like 5150 was like my first Van Halen album.
Right.
So where I was like, oh my God, I loved the keyboards and I loved it. And not just that, just at the end of the day, whether David Lee Roth was good in 83, the way that David Lee Roth is now versus Sammy Hagar. Sammy Hagar is like a fine wine that's been like literally kept in formaldehyde. The first thing I actually ever said to Sammy Hagar when I saw him was, please show me your ID, because he was like 68 at the time. The guy's like walking around, hey guys, how are you? Like I have arthritis, like I'm hurting myself, as you can see. Like here, Sammy Hagar's like, you want me to mix you a drink? And even last year I saw the guy. He's got more energy. And like he looks so good, and like, and then David Lee Roth is up there, and like he still has the body, and he's still like running around, but it's like.
Okay. Now, who produced those early records?
Ted Templeton.
Huh?
Ted Templeton.
Ted Templeton is the one who said this.
The Doobie Brothers. Who did the Doobie Brothers?
And Ted Templeton, he
smooth,
felt that
real smooth.
He felt that they would not have happened without David Lee Roth. But he said he almost, when he was ready to sign them to Warner Brothers, he was ready to actually talk to Eddie about getting rid of David and bringing in Sammy then, before they even made their first record. But he felt he would destroy the chemistry. But they sweated David getting through the recording sessions, because that
was the most record company answer ever, because I'd still let you be my product manager knowing that you said that. So like whatever you said, it just made me feel good. So like I get why you're so good at what you do, Dan. And I just want to say thank you for.
That's just something I read that's just something I read online. I have no idea what that was. That was Ted Templeton. That was Ted Templeton as a record guy, not me. So, but I believed it. So.
Well, look, I just want to say we're going to be wrapping up at least this episode for now. But first off, from the bottom of my heart, Dan, thank you so much on behalf, first of all of us, for being a part of the Lost Symphony project. LostSymphony.com, chapter 1, chapter 2 being announced soon, LostSymphony.com. Dan actually is helping us. So if we do well, it could be his swan song. In fact, that would be prolific. He'd be like Nostradamus because we have it here. I just want to say again, thank you, Dan, because people that don't know what to do in the music industry, this is a guy to listen to because he's like, we joke around about it, but like, you know, we just casually mention, you know, Michael Jackson or Ozzy Osbourne or Pantera. And he's just like, oh, here's another war story. But he was there. So I recommend to all the people out there, go back and listen to this podcast, edit out everything that I say. And Cory says, listen to Siobhán and Dan.
And we have a few minutes. We have a few minutes left. So Dan, why don't you just talk a little bit? Yeah, we got about, I guess. All right. So is there anything, Dan, you just want to touch on? Parting words. We're definitely gonna have to have you back because there's just so much to talk about.
Listen, but, I haven't even gotten to like a third of what, not even a quarter of what I want to talk to Dan about. If you'll indulge
but you were trying to wrap up early.
Well, I mean, like I said, I don't want to be here, and I feel bad for him. I'm trying. This is for him. This is not for you guys. This is for him, so he could go on with his life and pretend that this didn't happen and compartmentalize it like all those other bands.
Let me leave you with something that I'm drawn to because of what the three of you do individually, because you're teachers, you know, whether you're producing a young band in the studio or teaching to play an instrument. And I've heard you say this on podcasts before, is that, you know, people come in and it's like, yeah, you know, where do I sign up for a hit?
Cory 101.
You know, and my thing is that
booking now,
you know, first thing I sometimes say to them, you know, then they think I'm a geezer that they don't want to listen to. But I say, this is not McDonald's. You cannot drive up to this window and place an order and pick it up at that window. It just doesn't happen, you know? And then people say, you know,
they're like, yo,
but
man,
that other act, you know, they suck. How do they become I said, they're lucky. And you're not, you know, they won the lottery. You didn't, you know, you might be 10 times better than them, but don't expect that to happen to you. You have to earn it. You have to do what you do. And you have to become a music person. That's what you guys do. You got to work every day, you know, in one form or another. Whatever you're doing, it's all about your work. And you have to love that. You have to love doing it day in and day out. A lot of these people, they want to, can I go in the studio for an hour and do this record and then start my clothing line, you know, and it's, you know,
it's a great point. And that kind of comes back to the Charlie Daniels thing where the groundwork that he laid out in the years preceding his success allowed him to sustain that success now for decades.
That's it. I mean, it was like a piggy bank. He was just building up value. He was just building up, you know, people owing him because he just did everything people.
Well, it's the same way up. It's the same people on the way up as it is on the way down. That's what everyone's told me that's ever made anything. I've only been in the bottom, so I'm the one that you talk to on the way down. But apparently, if you're like Siobhán and you go on the way up, Siobhán, just so you know, you'll see me on your way back.
No, but it's so true, and I see this all the time.
God.
People that have the wrong motivations or a bad attitude, and I'm just like. Yeah, it's so tenuous. You never know when something's going to change. And it's amazing to me when some people like go in with so much bravado and they want something, but they don't respect the process.
Yeah, well, that's it, you know, and you know, but then you also see somebody young coming up and you see all those ingredients in them that you say, you know, I got to help this kid because they get it, you know. And so much I saw record executives over the years, not just with musicians, but with young people working in the business that, you know, they're telling them what they're doing wrong, you know. And my picture of it is that most everybody knows what they're doing wrong. You know, what they need to be informed about is what they're doing right.
Yeah,
because they need to be encouraged. You know, hey, that's right. Keep doing it. Do more of that. Do 10 times that. You know, and
you guys are so positive.
That's success. You know,
it is. That's so important.
That's amazing, Dan. I think now would be a good spot. We can wrap it up. Ben, if you want to take it home, we got a minute.
All right, I'll take it home. So first up, again, I want to say thank you to Dan Beck, who is again, so above our pay grade. I just want to say thank you for taking a risk on us. I mean, I obviously understand the ROI on someone like Siobhán, who has a band like Starset and looks like, again, a Facebook filter just, on her camera. I don't know how you do that because, I mean, you guys see this? This is called 2020.
It's called makeup and good lighting.
And thank you to Cory Peza for letting me talk over him continuously. And Dan, my last question is, will you come back and let us torture you again?
Sure. It's I can't really feel much anymore, so it's like so I could endure the pain.
For that, you've been 2020. See you soon, Dan. Love you guys. Next week.
Thanks.